Russia.
I can tell about
Russia.
it. I can tell about it.
Please.
Yes. Well, my late 1979, when NATO announced that they will modernize the nuclear weapons. And then there was a group in the Nordic countries of women that said, this is madness, it's crazy. We have to do something. And they started to plan a peace march that should go through Europe from Copenhagen to Paris. And they did that summer 1981. Then media and politicians that said, well, our nuclear weapons, they are not dangerous. You might go to East, you might go to Russia, you go to the USSR, because they are the dangerous ones. And then they said, okay, we better do that. But then we also must go to America, to the United States, because they also have nuclear weapons. And so they planned, and this is called Nordic Women's Peace Marches, and it was against nuclear weapons, East and West. So in 81, it was through Europe. In 82, it was called Stockholm, Helsinki, Moscow, Minsk. And in 83, it was called Oslo, New York, Washington. And we marched. We all, of course, in Russia, we had a train, a beautiful train, and we were then told at home that nobody will meet us. They were only the official ones. They would not meet the people in general. And media, they came with us. The TV, radio came with us. Main newspapers came with us. They sent, of course, only male journalists. We were women. And what we were told, it was not true. We met thousands of people in the streets in USSR. They blocked the streets with people, and they came and they embraced us. They had tears in their eyes because they said, it's the first time that West is coming with peace. It has never happened before. They were embracing us, kissing us. We were meeting people. We were walking in the streets. It was absolutely marvelous. While in the newspapers at home, the journalists had pointed out something negative. We were not on the same march. We, the participants and the journalists, we were on different marches, because the journalists, they pointed out the negative, while we experienced the extreme warmth and the positive atmosphere that met us. Then we were told, okay, you go to America as well. There, it was different, because there we had to walk. We had some beautiful dresses, long rosa or blue dresses, and flags. So we needed space. But when we came to New York, first of all, we were lodged in an old storehouse. It was 2 toilets for 100 people, 300 people. And we were received in the United Nations, yes. And when we walked on the street, we had to walk on the pavement, and that was not very easy, with huge banners and slogans and so on. It was not, and we had the police in front and back, and you know, these big guys with pistols in their pockets. But then after some while, they gave up and they didn't follow us anymore. And in America, we ended up in Washington on the Martin Luther Day 20 years anniversary, the 27th of August in 83. And that was great. That was really wonderful. Then when we come home then, I continued in peace movement. And it was, as Evelyn said, it was the Cold War still. And but then Mikhail Gorbachev, he came to power in Russia, and East Europe then wanted to meet us from the West. So all Western peace movements were very much invited to Budapest, to Prague, to Moscow, to Berlin, to all peace conferences that were arranged during the late 80s, from 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, And then 89, the wall fall, the Berlin Wall fall. And then the Cold War was over, if we can say so, but at least it should be. The Cold War was at least not anymore, and USSR, it was dissolved in all the different nations that it had been before. And especially Estonia and Lithuania and Estland, they had prepared for democracies. So they came to be democracies quite early in 1991. It was more difficult for Georgia and Ukraine, but also they became democracies, so-called democracies. I was very happy to be with East European people. They're very, very nice. So I continued to keep, many of us, the women's organizations, we continued to have contact with the East European Union countries. And I had projects in Ukraine for 7 years in the 1990s to empower women and to empower with democracy and equality. How to educate boys more empathy and women more empowerment. So, and the same I did in Estonia and Lithuania and Georgia also. So I'm very fond of East Europe. That was the 1990s, and at home in Norway we had quite many gender projects. Also a gender project that was called, and this is, well, first I have to say that United Nations, they had a 10 years anniversary for women's liberation or for women's change. And they had 4 huge UN conferences for women. In 85, 90, in 80, 85, 90, and 95. Then we said, why only for women? Why not UN conferences also for men? Because we can't have only the women perspectives, women roles changing, if not also the men roles are changing. So we were a group of Norwegian and Swedish, 6 Norwegians, that tried to make forward a UN conference for men and male values. And in that period, during the 90s, we had a lot of men and female researchers for gender policy, at least in the Nordic countries. And there were quite many conferences with very, very clever young men that stood up for changing the role of men. But then in some way it stopped. This was especially in 97, 96, 97. We had these huge conferences, first of all in the Nordic countries, but also in Europe. And we also have a very, very clever gender specialist in USA called Michael Kimmel. And he is, maybe some of you know him, and he is doing a great work, I think. And we have then also, shall we say, before it had been studies for women's empowerment, but now it's gender. It's not only women any longer, it's very much studying also research on men's roles and values and all that. And so now it's much more gender studies, and I think we have gender studies nearly everywhere now. So that's a very good change, I think, but it takes too long time. Then in 2000, then I started to travel in Palestine. I don't know how much you know about Palestine, but Palestine is heavily occupied. It's not a conflict. It's an occupation. It's an occupation. It's heavily occupied by Israeli forces. Here you have how Palestine was before 1946. Here you see what United Nations did, divided, gave 54% to Israel or to the Jews or to the Zionists, and Palestine had only 46%. Then we had, of course, all the Arab. This was decided in United Nations, and United Nations they had to vote 3 times because all the Arabic world they said no to this proposal, and many other countries as well. But the majority of the 3 votes, the majority went for dividing or to give Israel and the Jews 54% of Palestine, and Palestinians they had this green one. Then of course there were wars, and it was very hidden what happened there. It's now after 50 years when they can relieve all documents and so on. Much more research has come forward, and that we see that Palestinian population, they became refugees. 800,000 people became internal refugees, and they also went to all the surrounding countries, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, where there still are 4th-generation refugees are still in these countries. 800,000 at that time has become to nearly 5 million people today that want to come back. Not all of them want to come back, but we have to do something with the refugee problem, because some want to come back, some want to return to their homeland. So that is one of the big issues now in the I don't know how many negotiations there have been. And the Oslo Treaty in '93, that was definitely the disaster. It made things much, much worse for the Palestinians, and in some way also for the Israelis. It was a catastrophe, the Oslo treatment, or the Oslo Treaty in 1993-94. So today, that's what the Palestinians have left from their own country. It was 22%, or officially it's 22%, but that's not any longer. It's 11%, because the land grabbing from the Israelis is enormous. They are building settlements on occupied land that's against all international laws. They arrest people, young people, children, down to 12 years. They torture them against international laws, and nobody does anything. The UN tried to do quite a lot, but as we have this veto system from the five nations, including Russia and America, then USA will also give a veto to all kinds of resolutions that means anything. So UN cannot do anything. The European Union, they are still very afraid because of what happened during the World War II. They don't want to say no to the Israelis. They don't want to say stop. And besides, there is a lot of money in weapon industry, in the industry in Israel. And well, it is an occupation that is very, very bad. And I think the international community start to wake up now, especially because American Jews are now doing a lot. Very clever people. The American Jews, they start to wake up and they see what's happening. They really do see what's happening. Many of them have been there. They have seen the wall. They have seen the harassment against the Palestinians. They have gone through the checkpoints, these terrible checkpoints that's so humiliating that you can really not bear it. They have seen children being hand-folded and more or less tortured. So they really start now to recognize what's happening there. So they do a lot. And there are especially some individuals that do a lot. One called Pelomilo, and he is son of a general that took part of the wars, especially in the 60s and the 70s. He looked at his father's paper, gone through his father's paper, and see that what's been told with us It's not true. It was not Egypt that started the war in 67. It was Israel that started to stop the increasing military production or increasing military force in Egypt. It was better to stop it before it became too big. So actually they prepared the war, and then of course Egypt and all the other Arabic countries, they came, they started to make war against Palestine, and then we know this as it was the Palestine or the Egypt or the Arab countries that started the war, and he says it was not. And this man, he's Israeli citizen, son of a general, Israeli general, he stands up and says, we are the terrorists. And he's just fantastic. You can look at him on the internet, because he gives his small videos there. So I work very much with Palestine now, so when I'm coming home, we start a project where we want to inform much more about Palestinian children in Israel prisons, because that is absolutely against all kind of international laws, human rights, children's rights, women's rights, whatever. It's so not only humiliating, it's brutal, it's cruel. And the children are coming home and they are absolutely traumatized. So what will happen with the next generation of Palestinian children, that's difficult to say, but the hate is of course there. They create hate, and that hate goes against us in the West. First of all, us in the West, in Europe, and in the United States, towards the United States. And that is, for me, that is very, very difficult to face for my grandchildren, because they are the ones that will cope with this. This extremely hate that we create with all our wars. And it's not only Palestine, but it is also the war in Afghanistan, the war in Libya, and the war now in Syria. That is, after all, a civil war. But in Afghanistan, we, Norway as well, invaded Afghanistan. They are not our enemies. Why did we do it? We came with NATO. Why did we do it? And after 13 years of war, we see that the situation is worse than it was before. It's worse. It's not true that women are more liberated. It's not true that the children goes more to school. Some do, but most of them, they are too scared. The parents are so scared that they don't let the children go to school. And they're afraid they should be kidnapped, they're afraid they should be harassed, raped, whatever. So that they could, but they dare not, because the fear in Afghanistan they are occupied, or shall we say, they are harassed by Taliban at one side and their own government from the other side, and they are squeezed. So there's so much fear today that it wasn't before. Then it was only the Taliban. But now it's even worse than ever. Even if our politicians, they want to let us know something else. They say that we have succeeded. No, they have not. People, you don't know, you said you have to live there to understand. And journalists that stayed and lived and been with people in Afghanistan, they have quite another story to tell than our politicians that I go there for one day, say hello to the politicians, greet the soldiers, and say our soldiers does that wonderful work. Yeah, prove this, the young boys, the soldiers that are 20, 21 years old, they are forced to do what they bet. They are traumatized as well. One of our generals, he said, yes, these soldiers, within 15, 20 years, they will have terrible traumas. They are then in the 30s and the 40s. They will have terrible traumas, because what they had been forced to do in Afghanistan, what they had to do, what they have done in Afghanistan. They will be traumatized for the rest of their lives. So what we do with this war policy is absolutely, is madness, absolutely. So we have another project that we say, if you work for peace, stop paying for war. This says peace tax. And what that means, it's not that we are going to pay another tax, it's that the tax we pay through our taxes. In Norway, each of us, we are paying nearly $1,000 to the military. Each of us is in general, like that. We say this money should go to peace projects, not to the military, not to buy weapons, not to educate soldiers. We don't want to pay for war, we want to pay for peace. Therefore, this is what we call Peace Tax 2000, it's a report from 2010, and it's an international, shall we say, it's an international project. So, and we try to talk to the politicians again and again and again, and quite many proposals have been given everywhere, also in USA, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. So this is taxes for peace, not for war, a human right perspective. It's just the same, actually. So that is, and then because I don't do teaching, I don't do research because I'm not educated from university. I've been a physiotherapist in all my job life. And so I am in projects. We have quite a lot of projects in the NGOs in Norway. In Norway, we have so extremely many NGOs. Everybody belongs to 3, 4, 5, 6 NGOs. So I do projects, first of all. And we have today, it's Wednesday, today my colleagues will be in the street in front of Parliament as grandmothers for peace. We make pamphlets that we make ourselves from articles or whatever, what's happened in the last, or a project or whatever, an issue that we hand out to people in the street. And of course we stay in front of the Parliament to hand it out when the politicians go there. And they stop and they talk with us. And the police are very nice and say, oh, so nice to see you, and all that. It's very, I mean, Norway is a, shall we say, fairy tale country. So every Wednesday we do this, new pamphlets every day, and then we are not nice grandmothers cooking and taking care of our grandchildren and all that. Not at all. That's not an issue at all. We do discuss, and we are rather rough. We really bring forward very yes, that's our symbol, and there is also a video, also made in English there, telling what we do. And that is absolutely a bottom-up organization. There we do a lot of research about Norwegian arms industry. Norway and Sweden are one of the biggest arm industries, have one of the biggest arm industries per capita in the world. And we call ourselves a peace nation. And that again is the double standard from the politicians. We call ourselves a peace nation, and we are heavily involved in arms industry and export. We export a lot to America, and we know how these weapons they go all over. We have strict regulations that we shall not go to those and then countries in war, but we sell to the United States that sell over small things for rockets or whatever, and also for the drones. We have huge production of small mechanisms for the drones that we sell to America, to USA. I don't want to say America. I want to say United Nations. United States. US. Because America, that's not true. It's North America or United States. So They do a lot of research, and then they bring these facts to the Minister of Defense. We have now for many years a female Minister of Defense, and they are worse than the men. They are absolutely narrow-minded like this. They only go for, yes, our soldiers are very good. We have the right to be in Afghanistan. We have right to bomb Libya. Nobody bombed Libya as much as Norway. Nobody. Because we are the best class for the NATO. All other countries, cannot afford to have so high military budgets any longer because of the crisis, the economic crisis. Norway, with all of our money, we have so much money that we don't know what to do with them. We can, of course, we can support NATO. We are buying 56 of these F-35 fighters, that bring nuclear bombs. Why do we do that? It's not to protect Norway. It is to go to war with other countries, and they say it. We are supporting NATO with weapons. We are buying these fighters, F-35, from America. We could have bought it from Sweden, that had made much better protection for Norway, for the coast of ours. No. We went to America and buying, and they are so extremely expensive.
What's the philosophy behind that? Why is it supporting going to war? Why is Norway become aggressive?
We want to be the best class in NATO, and we are. We want to support NATO. We want to support American economy. These are being brought from Boeing, and Boeing is the American industry. War industry is not very good either. America is not very well off economically either. So we want to buy this, so this project can go on. Nearly all other countries, they say, no, we cannot afford. And Norway say, yes, of course we can afford. Because we have so much money from the oil export. We are producing oil and gas that we are selling everywhere, all over.
Yeah, but why,
polluting.
Why do you want to hurt people?
No, it's not, we don't attack, we defend. We wanted to go to Afghanistan to defend.
Forward defense, is that their philosophy?
Yes,
okay.
yes. We defend the Afghan people against the Taliban. We want to give empowerment to the women. And they change the subject, why we are there. When they see that the first one was wrong, then the next one may be better, then the third one will be even better. And then they fail, but they cannot submit it. They cannot, simply because then our policy has failed. So our female but the defense minister, she goes around and said that we have obtained so much in Afghanistan. Then there are people, journalists, coming and said, no, it's wrong. It's not like that. You haven't been there. You haven't seen what's happened on the ground. You talk with the politicians, that's all. So what you say is propaganda. It's not true. It's a double standard. And that is what our politicians are. They are double standard. And now we have a right-wing government. And they are even more double standard than the ones that was before, the Social Democrats. And they were double standard enough. But this is even worse.
But the people voted for that.
Yes, the people voted. Again, what we just have heard, we don't see, we don't hear, we don't know. The people voted. That was, of course, because they wanted lower taxes, and they should increase the elderly policy and the school policy. What's happening outside Norway, most people are not interested at all. We don't see, yes, we hear, oh, it's terrible what happens to Syria, and it's terrible what's happened there and there. And then we talk about grandchildren. and food. It's much more nice. And then there are some that try, we have quite a strong environmental NGOs now that try to look at what's happening with the environment up in the north, with the glaciers melting, with temperature that's increasing 2% all over the world. We are also stuck by the change of climate. That's a non-issue for the government. They don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it because one of the two parties, they always said that it's not this is natural, it's not man-made. So it's very difficult for them to say something else now. So they don't talk about it. So that is policy. And I agree if some of you heard Alex the other day talking, because Tom asked, say something about Burma and Norway. And you heard what he said, Alex. He said he was tried to be very polite, but he did not, what he said was not very nice, what Norway is doing. It will be another Sri Lanka, he said. He gave, shall we say, an example. It's like another Sri Lanka. We try to negotiate peace in Sri Lanka, and you know what happened there, and that's what we try to do in Burma. And but they don't. They talk with the politicians, and that's all. So when we talk about Norway as a peace country, so just forget it. Just forget it. We are not any longer. It's a shame to say that, but that's how we start to look at it, more and more people, I think. So we are some in the NGOs, and we have, of course, the freedom. We have all the freedom we want, absolutely. We are very democratic, and we have all the freedom, so we can really say what we want. And we can go to the ministers and say, please, can we have a conversation with you? And they say, yes, come up. And it's a very open dialogue between the politicians and us. But they are also stuck in international policy.
You talk very much about the global situation and your involvement in that, and about how Norway is foreign relations and its outward-looking viewpoint. But what's it like between the communities or in the communities? Norway a violent society or a peaceful society? Or the things I hear, we heard about this woman of Pakistani descent, death threats. Also, you know, Anders Breivik. I hear that Oslo has lots of problems. Is it?
That's true.
How is it as a country?
That's true. Well, as a country, I mean, we have violence as all other countries have violence and violence in the streets and violence here and there. Yeah, that's the same. But I'm not afraid to walk in the streets. Absolutely not. I'm not afraid to be attacked or anything. When you walk in the main street, we have one main street, and Oslo is a very small city. There you have beggars, but they are from East Europe mostly. Beggars on only 10 meters. I have never seen beggars here in Thailand. Maybe one or two, that's all. If you walk the main street in Oslo, you see beggars everywhere. Everywhere you see beggars from East Europe mostly. Yes, and well, we have a lot of autonomy in our communities, and but it's very much about school system, elder policy, kindergartens, how we should build up the kindergartens, if we should have 3 or 4 teachers for each 10 children, and building more streets, for more cars. Yeah, that's about the. Okay. And hospitals, of course, that there are not people there, that it's not good enough. I mean, it's excellent. It's excellent. So we don't. That's not the issue. That's not the problem. The problem is the environment. The problem is what's happened around us. But for most people, we want to keep. Nobody is going to hurt our standard of life, and it's extremely high. Very good. We have pensions for everything. If you have a child, we immediately have a pension until the child is 18 years old. We have pensions for absolutely everything. We are one of the richest countries in the world because of the oil and gas. That now pollutes so much that we have to stop it. But of course, there's not a majority for stopping that. It's too much money. Money, 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 money. Is it true?
That's another big question. The rest of the world wants to develop to be Norway, and we say it's unsustainable, and they say, look at Norway, you're not doing anything, you've got all these resources, why should we? Is there an answer to that? What do you
we buy coupons in the forest in Ecuador, for instance, and I think also in Burma. So the forest should not be exploded. That's our. That's how we give to the environmental development. We buy this, what you call coupons or whatever, from not the quotes, the quota. We buy them, and then we don't need to do anything at home.
Like in the medieval church, when you would pay the priest to forgive you.
Yes.
You know, I've sinned. If I pay you so much money for the church, is that okay?
Yeah. And then we don't need to do anything at home because we pay other countries. So, yes, Jan?
I'm not a specialist on these issues, but I think that I read somewhere or I heard a news report about education standards, and they seem to be going down in Norway compared to other parts of Europe. And the explanation was that the people consider themselves to be too well off, so there's no need to improve and to excel in educational terms any longer. Is that a way forward?
What you said, that people think we are better than others, that's true. That's true, I think. I think we are very selfish and egocentric. That the standard of education is going down. Yes, when it comes to these PISA things and other international systems that then we are not on high. I think Finland is very high up on this. We have another approach that we are working very much with the social life. Equality in classes, that's social life. And I must say we have extremely good leaders. And our industry is going up like that. Not only the gas, but all kind of industry, because we have so very, very well-educated leaders, industrial leaders, and also political leaders, I must say, because we have equal rights for everybody. We are women and men are equal. We are not big gaps for rich or poor. It's increasing, but it's still very low. That's our old culture. And because of that, the leaders are listening to the workers, and they do cooperate. So our industry has good leaders, and therefore we also have very healthy and good industry. So it's something strong here, and something strange here. But our industry is increasing. Not only the oil and gas, but all our industry is increasing because of good leaders. And then it must be the education system that's good, because it's so much based for equality and for social approach. And then maybe they are not so clever to read or to mathematics and these things. They say that can be learned afterwards.
No Nobel Prize for mathematics.
That's in Stockholm, that's Swedish. We only have the peace. We gave the Nobel Peace Prize to Obama. Crazy. That was the leader of the committee. He forced through that one. So, and he's the leader of the European Commission. Yeah, Council, European Council. Okay, there was someone, yeah?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who used to point to Norway and say, hey, look what Norway's doing. A lot of good things, very progressive, good social welfare programs. So when you're talking about the munitions industry and militarization in Norway, it was very eye-opening, disappointing, shocking, and I saw it. What struck me was the parallels with Japan. Japan is seen as Japanese see themselves as a peace-loving people, a peaceful nation, not involved in war. Japan has a peace constitution, with Article 9 of the Constitution not prohibiting Japan to have a attack force army, just a self-defense force, not allowing nuclear weapons into Japan. Et cetera, et cetera. But in 1995, when Clinton and Hashimoto, Clinton was the president of the United States, Hashimoto was prime minister, they came up in a press conference with what they called the Clinton-Hashimoto Accords. In the Clinton-Hashimoto Accord, Clinton said, Japan and the United States had the most important military alliance in human history. We will continue to work together for peace and democracy throughout the world. So in recent years now, Japan, if you look in the last 10 years, Japan is number 5, between number 4, 5, and 6 in global military spending. 4, 5, and 6. Huge weapons industry. They have intercontinental ballistic missiles, intermediate ballistic missiles. They've got 80 tons of weapons-grade plutonium. They've got battleships and submarines and F-36s and F-15s, and you name it, they've got it. They export a lot of military weapons components to the U.S. military and to military in other countries. There's supposed to be a ban on weapons export, but components under those little fine lines of permissibility, in the way the laws are interpreted. Now in Japan, there's also a strong peace movement, and that is my question to you with the peace movement in Norway. The peace movement, well, it's very difficult to make advances against this hegemony of the military industrial complex in Japan. But the peace movement, one aspect of it is to protect the peace clause, Article 9 of the Constitution, and the other component is to abrogate the U.S. military alliance, the Japan-U.S. military alliance system. It's in the military alliance system, and I think it's similar in NATO as well. If one or the other country says we will abrogate, we're going to pull out of the alliance, then let's say, for example, Japan said we're going to abrogate the security treaty, then the United States has 1 year to pull its troops out. And that's always a component of the Japanese peace movement. And so I'm wondering, in Norway, is that a component of the peace movement to get the Norwegians to say, hey, let's get out of NATO, and that way we can show the other countries of the world that we are opposed to U.S. military interventionism?
Not any longer, it was. But we don't have that any longer. Many think we should have it back, but I don't think we will. No, I think 90% of Norwegian people are for a strong NATO. They think NATO gives us security. And we try to say military weapons can never secure us. It's the non-violence. So in my the Peace Council, that's an umbrella organization for 20 peace organizations, to be a member, you have to go for non-violence. So we go for non-violence and disobedience and civil disobedience, and try to learn young people these techniques, because it's really techniques. And we also have quite many projects where we go out with communication. So, but NATO is just like peace tax. It cannot be an issue because it's too small. It's too small, and the politicians say, okay, we support you, but we cannot do anything about it. We can't go against the system. So maybe it's a good idea, but the system is like that and that. We cannot do anything. So it's so hard to go further. So no to NATO, yes. Many of us would like,
is
but...
Is there opposition to the amount of taxes being used for military militarization and military spending?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No,
Is that a component
because
of the peace
people
plan?
don't know. People don't know. But we know that 10% of the world's military budget would be enough to get rid of poverty, to give education, to give health. So if we could only, that is what we maybe try to do now, reduce our military budget with 10%, but it is increasing every year. So only 10% of the military spending we would have economy. And when it comes to United Nations, that does a lot of good things in the world. The amount of money they have is, I think, 10% or something of what the military spendings are. So, I mean, it's a disbalance here that's enormous. And I think we have to do something about it. Any more questions?
And just if Japan came 4, 5, and 6 in the country that spends the most, where is Norway in that?
They're about
We-
15 to 20.
Yes, but we are a small
But
country,
yeah,
so
that's
when
per
I say
capita.
it's per capita, it is so, I mean, on the general, 15 or even worse, but per capita, we spend a lot. And it's big profit. That's why we do it. We do it only because it's big profit. The biggest profit in the world, weapon, women, and drugs, gives the biggest profit. So therefore, I don't say that but it's the profit that you get out of the money that's so huge. Women, weapon, and drugs. That's nice, huh?
Trafficking.
Trafficking, yeah.
Most trafficking
Trafficking.
isn't women for sex purposes.
Yeah, the
Most
sex purpose.
No, most trafficking isn't that. Most
No.
trafficking is labour trafficking.
Yes,
And
but
then
it's
small
selling
part.
women in some prostitution.
That's not
No, not any longer.
No,
No.
it's labour trafficking.
Labor traffic. Yes. Okay. But still.
What I think is interesting is I've just looked at, have you heard of the 9 noble virtues?
9.
Noble virtues. The 9 noble virtues. They're the
Yeah.
Viking values, the old Norse values.
Yeah.
Society was all of Nordic, Northern Europe, all of it, Britain, Iceland, this was the
Yes,
Viking
yes, yes.
society.
The Nordic countries.
So if I just read them: courage, truth, honour, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, perseverance. There's nothing about compassion,
No.
forgiveness, or generosity in any of those values. And so if I think what Norwegian society has got by what you've described doesn't contradict any of those values.
No.
Strong military.
Mm, yeah.
And maybe that's just part of the culture.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
really difficult
maybe.
to change that culture
Yeah.
if those are the values.
And if you go to Norway, remember that it's extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive. Expensive. I think it's nearly one, for, as you also say, here the same costs will be 1/5 less here than it is in Norway. What I pay for this to go to hospital, it's 1/5 of what it would cost for me to go in a Norwegian hospital. 1/5. If we go to restaurant, it's 1/5. I went doing my hair yesterday. 1/5 of, yeah, maybe also 1/10 of what I would have to pay in Norway. It's extremely, and people are having salaries that's out of this world. So high are they. Women, husband and wife, 2 salaries, because in Norway they need 2 salaries to survive, they say. And I mean, they can afford to do whatever. So extremely, we pay high taxes, but the salaries and the costs in Norway are absolute. Therefore, Kjell is living here with his pension.
May I say something positive about Norway?
Yes, please, please.
No, I chose Norway. I came there by chance, but now I've chosen it intentionally as one of my main platforms. I spend there January and February every year, and this is my main platform. Before oil was found, Norway was very poor, and they had a culture of poverty that was a culture of solidarity. There was, it's a word called dugnad, which means solidarity work, like in the Lahu village, where 15 men would come one day and they would build one house together. There would be no money involved. And this was a traditional Norwegian cultural heritage. It's part of the Norwegian heritage because Norway was so poor. And then the other heritage is equality in dignity. It is because Norway is so far away that nobody really ever was tempted to thoroughly conquer it. It was so poor and had nothing to offer, so the only ones who conquered it a little bit were the Danes. They had some people there, but basically the Norwegians were always left on their own. They were never kind of pushed into a hierarchical empire, never really taught to bow. So there is a strong sense of equality in dignity there that other cultures have unlearned. And the other thing is really from the Viking time a sense of globality, of being global, of being not just here but going out on the ocean with boats. So my message always to Norway is, okay, now Norway is losing the biggest resource they have. The biggest resource of Norway is not the oil. The biggest resource is their cultural heritage that comes perhaps from being poor. It's the solidarity culture, it is the equality in dignity culture. When you read this sentence, the first article of the Human Rights Conventions, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This is a Norwegian heritage. In all other countries, almost everywhere I come, I feel that the heritage I meet is all human beings are born unequal in dignity and rights. This is the tradition. In Norway, it's a strong tradition of equality and dignity. And there is one word for it, likeverd. Here we have equality in dignity, gleiche Menschenwürde. We need many words in other languages. In Norway, there's one word, likeverd. So, solidarity, equality in dignity, and then a sense of global responsibility. The Vikings had the conquering spirit. Now there is the Nobel Peace Prize. It's the sense of responsibility. There is a big sense of global responsibility in Norway. So I say, when I'm there, I say, look, you have these three wonderful resources, and now try to see them and to nurture them back into life and not sell them out and avoid selling them out as everywhere in the rest of the world for profit.
That's true. That's true. Our best resources and our politicians, they use it for everything. They say, because of our women, that's our resource. It's not oil and gas any longer. It's because it's likeverd, is equality, and the women, because we have for so many years had equal, shall we say, we have among 20 ministers, 10 are women and 10 are men. In parliament there are nearly 50-50, so it's very much equality. And because of that, we have a very good society. We really, I mean, to live in Norway, we are so fortunate. It's a fairy tale country. But we have a very strict refugee policy. It's not easy to come in.
No. So thank you.